Hello and welcome to this week's edition of World Today. Our focus this week is the Russia-Ukraine war, which marked its 100th day on June 3rd. While the world and the people affected by the war are seeking peace, a resolution does not seem in sight. In the next half hour, we'll take you through the past 100 days of the war. A war beyond a month in these times borders on untenable, unsustainable. But the Russia-Ukraine war has entered its fourth month and an end does not seem in sight. Did Putin underestimate Ukraine, or has the West miscalculated the punitive measures against Russia, which has done precious little to stop the war? Meanwhile, Russia has captured territory beyond the Donbass region in eastern Ukraine, and if winter set in, reclaiming territories would become near impossible.
"100 days of a deadly war which has led to millions rendered homeless. Cities after cities destroyed, and a divided world on how to handle Russia. For the people who have families on both sides of the border, the war wounds run very deep, and it will take a very long time to heal. What was a special military operation evolved into a bloody war of attrition, with no winners and none vanquished.
When the opponent disappeared, both the Warsaw Treaty disappeared and the Soviet Union disappeared, they decided that they will move the line of defense eastward. And they did this 5 times without explaining against whom they're going to defend themselves.
But the world found a war hero and a villain.
You know, you're dealing every day with Vladimir Putin. I mean, look at what he's done to these people. What does it make you think? He's a butcher.
Russia had done the groundwork before invading Ukraine. It all began on 21st February 2022, when the State Duma of Russia passed a bill to officially recognize the self-proclaimed Donetsk People's Republic and Luhansk People's Republic of the Donbass region in eastern Ukraine as independent states. President Putin signed the decree along with separatist leaders of Donetsk and Luhansk and further signed agreements on friendship, cooperation and assistance with the republics. On 24th February, Russia invaded Ukraine after DPR and LPR sought assistance from Moscow to demilitarize and denazify the region.
Bakhmut, Popasna, Severodonetsk.
In this axis, the occupiers have concentrated the most significant activity for now. They created a bloodbath there and are trying to destroy everything. Everything alive. Literally, no one has destroyed Donbass in the way that the Russian troops are doing now. I'm grateful to everyone, all our warriors who hold positions and have the bravery to counterattack.
Позиції і мають хоробрість контратакувати.
But Putin has gone beyond the Donbass, and the timelines have shifted. What was supposed to be a quick shock and awe invasion has gone on for more than 4 months. Beyond the Donbass, Russia continues to conduct long-range missile strikes against infrastructure across Ukraine, the UK's Ministry of Defense said. Putin failed to topple Zelensky's regime, putting in place a pro-Russia leader like Medvedchuk. Hard negotiations to seek recognition of DPR and LPR as independent states. Negotiate recognition of Crimea as part of Russia. Crippling sanctions. Europe weaning off Russia gas. Finland and Sweden applying for NATO membership.
In the last few weeks, there were unlawful measures taken against Russia by the number of Western countries to freeze Russian assets. By doing this, the collective West has undermined the reliability of their currencies.
But on sanctions, Moscow is still holding out. In fact, the real test of stopping Russian gas imports will be seen during winters. Many European nations like Hungary, Slovakia are yet to find alternatives to Russian gas, and until that happens, many would seek exemption. The war has also led to severe food shortage and rise in food prices. For Zelensky, who dared Russia with NATO membership, there have been major failures too. Zelensky could not secure NATO membership. He couldn't secure EU membership. Assured the nation of NATO intervention, but none came. Delays in getting military assistance from the West. Europe became a divided house. No consensus on how to tackle Russia. Lost major swaths of land beyond Donbass. The core of the Russia-Ukraine war is the Donbass region. A region that has seen conflict for the past 8 years since the 2014 Euromaidan conflict, an uprising that was the beginning of the pro-West regime in Kyiv, with pro-Russia parts of Ukraine demanding separate state. Donbass will remain a conflict zone for a long time to come. But the question would remain about the other parts of eastern Ukraine, which are yet to be reclaimed by Kyiv. With nuclear threats from Russia, the two sides could be pushed back to the negotiating table.
Joining us now is the German envoy to India, Ambassador Walter Lindner. Many thanks, sir, for joining us here on India Today. Now, as we mark 100 days of the Russia-Ukraine war, where do you see the war headed? West and Europe have maybe 3 months more before winter set in. So what do you think is going to happen, and how are you going to really handle Russia?
Well, I think it's important to commemorate today 100 days, because 100 days is a number, but it's also every day is a civilian victim. What is happening after, what's the resume of 3 months or 100 days? You have tens of thousands of soldiers dead on both sides. Then you have civilian victims, more than 5,000 on the Ukrainian side. Then you have more than 8 million people fleeing. Then you have a world economy which is now suffering through that, inflation, oil prices, and then you have hunger and food shortages in Africa, just because Putin doesn't let the warehouses of wheat by the Ukrainians, he doesn't let the ships anchor there. So you have a militarization of international politics, where there's a kind of a race now to spend more and more money for tanks and for heavy weaponry, and this is all going into a very bad direction. So I hope there's not another 3 months, as you mentioned, to suffer through this, because every day we're talking people dying, and only one person, and this is Mr. Putin, who has started this brutal war. He can change this. He can, by order of like this, stop it. He doesn't stop it, so he's responsible for each and every of this damage.
Ambassador Lindner, you make a very important point when you said militarization of the gas economy, but also there's another phrase that keeps being used very often, which is weaponizing heat. How do you propose the energy requirements of Europe and Germany be fulfilled, with Russia announcing that they're going to stop supplying gas, or for that matter, Germany now looking at banning Russian gas altogether?
Well, I mean, it's important first that one of the repercussions of this war is not also that we are not focusing on world challenges anymore, like climate change, like we have to rescue this planet from global warming and this kind of, we need renewable energy, so that now people are more focusing on getting weaponry and spending money for military budgets rather than to spend money for this. So this, we have to make sure in the G7, in the G20 and in international agreement that this is not an additional shortcoming and repercussion. So there's a lot of, as I said, militarization there verbally, but also in the buying of weapons. And you can't spend the money twice, so you have to spend it either for that or for development issues or for green economy or for infrastructure and for education and this kind of thing. We need to solve the global challenges of mankind and not spend money for weaponry just because one mad president has decided so.
So you are also saying that the upcoming G7 summit is going to discuss and deliberate upon one of the most important aspects, which is shifting from carbon to renewable energy, something that people like us who are into environment have always been asking, but it took a war to do that.
Yes, this is it's maybe before the war was there and maybe before the COVID was there, this was the topic. Even during COVID, you know, that we thought after COVID we have to restart economies in a green way. This is, you know, Friday for Future and all these topics which were in all our discussions in your program, in other programs, are now replaced by talks about war. And so this is one of the things we have to make sure that also the G7 is not losing focus just only on the war, but also on the future challenges, which is how to make a green future and how to save the planet from overheating and these kind of things. These are challenges, even if we have the war there. The war is there, but the other challenges are not disappearing.
Ambassador Lindner, thank you so much for joining us here on India Today. Meanwhile, the story does not end there. There is a lot when it comes to how Europe is handling the entire Russia-Ukraine war. Now, after Finland and Sweden applied for the NATO membership, in another historic decision, Denmark will now be joining the European Union's defense policy after it held a referendum, signaling the latest shift among Nordic countries to deepen defense ties in response to Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Now, Denmark is the only EU member that is not part of the bloc's defense and security policy. The referendum marks the first time that a government has succeeded in abolishing one of several exemptions secured in a 1993 referendum on the Maastricht Treaty, which is the foundation treaty of the European Union.
Denmark has voted a very convincingly yes. Maybe all the votes have not been counted yet, but perhaps it is the strongest result ever in a matter of EU in Denmark. That is huge if that is where we are after 50 years of membership. I am extremely happy about it.
And to discuss this historic decision, I'm being joined by Ambassador of Denmark to India, Svane Freddy. Ambassador Freddy, many thanks for joining us here on India Today. It has been 100 days and the sanctions have hardly helped. Now, the question is, can Putin really be stopped? Can West and the Europe really stop or contain Russia?
Thank you very much for having me on your program. Yeah, it's a very difficult question to answer. I mean, war is not serving any purpose. And of course, Europe and Denmark, we reacted strongly against this unprovoked war. But it cannot continue. It goes without saying, 100 days of land war in Europe. It's a devastating war that has global implications. So I really hope that it's possible to stop this war one way or another. And I think it's important that all parties are looking into how can this be stopped. But we have to keep in mind that there was an unprovoked aggression against a democratic country in Europe, Ukraine. Never heard of, never seen before, so we had to react. And hopefully, whatever we are doing, this is a reaction. It's not an action. It's a reaction to what happened that at some point in time it will serve its purpose.
Right, Ambassador, also, let's just go back to the decision that your country made. It is a historic decision of joining the European Union's defense policy. How does it really help Denmark?
As you know, we opted out back in 1993. This is almost 20 years ago. And at that time, we decided that through a referendum that we would not join this pillar of the European Union. But given the actual context and given what I just described as an unprovoked war against all basic principles, that led the government to call, with a broad majority in our parliament, to call for a referendum to see if we are ready to join the defense and security policy that the EU has. And an overwhelming majority, almost 67% of all the votes cast voted in favor, and is really unprecedented. We have had a number of referendums related to EU and the European Union, and it's the first time we have seen this huge outcome positively. So it will mean that Denmark will join fully, and hopefully it will be around 1st of July, we'll join fully in the common security and defense policy. So we stand 100% behind what EU members already have developed in that regard.
Right. So it does mean that Denmark is trying to secure all its corners and to stabilize itself. How do you see Denmark's security stabilizing by joining this framework?
It would definitely bring us in alignment and fully in line with whatever is needed in a European context. And don't forget, as you rightly said, we were founding members of NATO, and NATO has more members than the EU. And NATO is our overall framework to protect us against unprovoked aggression and wars, and has been stabilizing and have secured peaceful and prosperity in our region. The EU has its own kind of take, and we would like to play exactly the same role, not in any competition with NATO. NATO stands for what NATO does, but EU as such also have to develop and have developed, and now we are joining a common security and defense policy. It means closer collaboration in defense as such, coordination when it comes to EU, let's say, actions on ground and so forth. But this is to protect, this is in order to secure that we have peace and stability. And this is very important, also given the actual context in Europe. It's an important part of our, let's say, ambition to secure a far better, more stabilized, and more predictable, and thereby also prosperous world. So it was an extremely important contribution.
Right, we were discussing about how Denmark is a founding member of the NATO, but defense budgets now will increase. All European countries are going to see an increase in defense budgets. How do you see it amid difficulties in economy? How do you see these defense budgets really working out for Denmark? We have NATO, and now you also are a part of the defense policy of the European Union.
We have to pay for our own defense, but within the overall framework. You can't expect others and not other taxpayers to pay for your security. You have to contribute yourself. And that has been a long-lasting wish, priority of different US presidents, because the US has been really caretaking our, let's say, defense at large. So in that context, it's a natural logic consequence. But of course, the actual situation in Ukraine with the unprovoked war initiated by Russia and launched by Russia and Putin, of course, that has really forced the European countries to speed up, accelerate their let's say, thinking on how do we protect ourselves? How do we secure that we are not being attacked and facing an unprovoked war?
Right. Ambassador Freddy, how do you see now military alliances or dependence aside, there is another big major dependence, and that is on gas. How do you see Europe manage gas without Russia should the war continue till the next winter?
Yes, the sanctions are there and they will stay, and they might even be reinforced and tightened. I think we are ready to pay the price, and you can see also my government have decided really to stop import of Russian gas and so forth. And that's how it is. We will see a transformation at a speed that we have never envisaged before. And if there's one good thing about all this, this is that we are fighting the climate change also in parallel with that. So the more we can reduce our dependency on fossil fuels, the better. But it comes at a high price, and I think we are ready. I know we are ready, and then much for that.
Ambassador Freddy, many thanks for joining us here on World Today. Thank you. Ambassador Freddy, many thanks for joining us here on World Today. Indeed, a pleasure. With that, we slip into a short break. On the other side of the break, we will bring you defining images of the Russia-Ukraine war in the 100 days that have gone by.
Sir? India's #1 political reporter.
Defines what seems to be happening, vendetta politics. कोई दूध के से धुला हुआ नहीं है.
Unmatched eye, unmatched experience.
The world has changed. My black hair has become grey as well.
And with unmatched passion for the story.
Do not monopolize the conversation.
When it's 100% news that matters. It's News Today with Rajdeep Sardesai. Monday to Friday, 9 p.m. Only on India Today TV.
Hi guys, we are 70. Namaste.
Welcome back to World Today. Now, as the Russia-Ukraine war has entered more than 100 days, we bring you the most defining images of the conflict that has changed the lives of millions. Heavy Russian shelling on Kyiv has changed the entire landscape of the capital city. Once a bustling city of millions, now stands in ruins, with everything reduced to rubble. As soon as the first shelling started to happen in Kyiv, and the roads leading up to Kyiv were jam-packed with people trying to reach their homes away from the capital city. Roads to Kyiv was locked in car jam. In the initial days of the invasion, Russian forces attacked the main television tower in the heart of Ukraine's capital city of Kyiv. The attack potentially disrupted tower signal. In the opening combat of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, Mi Russian helicopters launched a deadly air assault on Kyiv's Hostomel airport to seize it. In the efforts to fight against Russian forces, a brewery in Ukraine has gone from making beer to Molotov cocktails. Residential buildings in the capital city of Kyiv have been reduced to rubble after relentless bombing by Russian forces. Death, despair, and destruction after 100 days of war. Irpin and Bucha were heavily bombed by Russian forces. India Today's cameras captured the devastation on their cameras. As Russian troops tried to take control over the capital city of Kyiv, residents took up arms to stand in the fight along with the country's military against Moscow's invasion. Ukrainian soldiers destroy a column of Russian tanks and armored vehicles on a rural road. The Bucha massacre. Bodies of hundreds of civilians were found in Bucha after Russian forces pulled out of Kyiv suburb. Over 10 mass graves were found with hundreds of bodies in them. Ukraine accused Russia of committing war crimes. 200 people were killed when Russian forces attacked a theatre in the port city of Mariupol. It was believed that around 1,300 civilians were using the theatre as a bomb shelter to escape Russia's brutality. The Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant in Ukraine, largest of its kind in Europe, was attacked by Russian troops. A massive nuclear disaster loomed after the attack, but the building remains safe. This image of a pregnant woman in Mariupol hospital bombing became the iconic image of this war. She was rescued from the rubble but didn't live long. She gave birth to a stillborn and soon after died while the war went on. As the war raged, civilians trained to defend their country. National anthem became the one tune that united Ukrainians and motivated them to go on. UNICEF reports that in the 100 days of war in Ukraine, 5.2 million children are now in need of humanitarian assistance. At least 262 children have been killed and 415 injured in attacks since the 24th of February. In an attempt to save life and build it afresh, away from the war, Ukrainians risked their lives. They walked miles, crossed broken bridges to reach safe harbor in a foreign land among unknown people. That's all in this edition of World Today. 100 days of the Russia-Ukraine war, and it continues. A stalemate when it comes to talks, and lives continue to be destroyed. We'll keep monitoring the situation and bringing you factual updates of the war. Thank you for watching.